Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is going to be an update on what I'm planning to do with my Empire of Sonnstahl army. It's the army that I also play as Vampire Covenant, so it's a dual army in that sense. So first I'll just go through the different units that I have for the different models that I have for different units in both books. And then I'll discuss what I'm going to do with the army. So first off, we have a bit of an army picture. This is currently everything that I own for Empire of Sonnstahl slash Vermin, not Vermin Swarm, but Vampire Covenant. Yeah, so on the left side, we start with some coaches and stuff. I have this model, which is either a Ultra Van Dev or a Arcane Engine or any of these models. It can also be the Court of the Damned. And then I have a couple of these. So I have another one with horses. So this is more suitable as a dark coach or as an arcane engine. I have an actual dark coach, black coach from Games Workshop that I use as a dark coach or an arcane engine. And then we have a steam tank in the back that I can also still use as one of these coaches. Otherwise, I have some models for Vampire Spawn, Great Bats. Yeah, and that mostly. I really don't use these for my Empire army. I started with these Graveguard models that I attached some wings to, because they weren't. I didn't really like the Vampire Spawn models from Games Workshop, the Crypt Horse or the Crypt, yeah, the Vargheists. I didn't really like those, especially not in my army because they're a bit too feral for my likes. So then I really wanted to get these. Birdmen of Catraza. However, they are quite a rare find. So I converted some to just have my own vampire spawn. I never was a big fan of big units of vampire spawns. But then again, that's also a bit of a playstyle thing. And then someday on the second-hand side, I found the Birdman of Catraza. Just 9 models, and then I could buy them for a really decent price, and I just got them as soon as I could because I thought they fit really well into the rest of my army. And then otherwise, well, I have a bunch of core, obviously. So I have state militia, or at least models that I use as state militia. And then otherwise, I basically have a very broad collection of infantry. Usually what I do is that I just make sure that the front rank and if possible the front 2 ranks of my infantry regiments are Wizwick, in the sense that I have spearmen in front or halberdiers or swordsmen or stuff that resembles swordsmen. And then the Imperial Guard units usually get a unit filler and the support units don't. So in that sense my opponent can quite easily distinguish between the different units. And yeah, I never had any complaints about that. I guess that if you play with so many models that are kind of vague in what kind of equipment they're carrying, because it's really a mix of scythes and spears and just pocket knives and I don't know, pistols, whatever. And that it's really not clear to your opponent anymore anyway what the unit is armed with, except for any tokens that they have with them or the front rank. So there's not that much confusion because everything is not clear basically. Yeah, and then for my Vampire Covenant, I play either ghouls or skeletons. I never mix them because well, it's quite difficult to differentiate with kind of like a proxy army between ghouls and skeletons. And then for the zombies, I always say that I use the ranged models. So the handgunners or the crossbowmen or the bowmen, they're always just zombies, and that is remarkably clear for your opponent, to be honest. And then in the back here we have a lot of characters on foot. So there's some models that I use as prelates, some banshees, some vampires, obviously, marshals, inquisitors, and wizards. Yeah, I think that's it. And then in the back, all the way in the back, we have the artillery corps. So I have 4 bases for these that I can mix up. with the different artillery pieces. I find that transport is way easier for these if you have separate bases and separate artillery pieces, because otherwise, if you assemble everything on one base, um, it gets a bit tricky to transport it. So if you have some sturdy bases that can take a bit of beating, then it's no issue just to put your artillery piece on the base every single time that you play. Um, yeah, so that works out quite well for me. I was not that enthusiastic about rocket batteries, so I made my own rocket battery models just to be able to use them in a couple of games. Um, I might have to get some at some point, even though I'm not really enthusiastic yet. The biggest fan I am of the mortars in in the left side of this picture. Mortars, they always deliver. Cannons can really make you sad sometimes because it's just one shot that you have. The mortar has a reroll, and that helps out tremendously. Then we have the dragon and the two griffins. So the griffins I use as griffins in the Empire of Sonnstahl. I can use them as monstrous revenants in Vampire Covenant. I have them just separately on the base, so I can also switch out the base for a smaller base if I want to. The dragon is also on a small base, as you can see, and then I have a big base separate, so I can run him as a Terrorgeist, or as a, what's the name? I think it's a Terrorgeist. Yeah, then we also have 2 units of 4 Phantomhosts, which is way more than you're allowed to play right now, but good old days where you could just play an entire ethereal army in Warhammer days. Yeah, and then we have a unit of Ogre Tusker Cavalry. These are my Knights of the Sun Griffin, or Winged Reapers for Vampire Covenant. Winged Reapers, I have multiple units of Knights of the Sun Griffin, so I tend to use normal Knights of the Sun Griffin or Demigryph Knight models for this, because they are still like Griffs, so the chances that they'll be flying is maybe a bit higher. But I do remind my opponents quite often when I'm playing Winged Reapers that the models that I'm using are actually flying models, even though they don't have any wings. But yeah, well, again, 9-Dage is model agnostic, so rules-wise, there's no issue there. I think it's just sportsmanship, like a bit nice to remind your opponent that your model without wings can still actually fly. Yeah, we have a zoom still of the Phantom Hosts and the Knights of the Sun Griffin, or well, the Ogre Mournfang Cavalry. You can see a snippet of the Minotaurs that I have that also function as Knights of the Sun Griffin. And then we have the cavalry. I only have 11 electoral cavalry. If I need more, I have some other cavalry models that I can use to beef up the unit. And then in the front, I have my mounted characters. So I have 2 wizards, I think, yeah, a prelate or an inquisitor, a BSB, and a knight commander. And then we have some more Knights of the Sun Griffin, with an ogre that I also use as a Varkulak, because I also can change out his base. A Pegasus, so that's mostly for Marshall on a Pegasus, because he is on a 40x40mm base. I can also still run him as a third Monstrous Revenant if I want. And then in the back, my unit of Minotaurs that function as Knights of the Sun Griffin. So the way that I started this army was that back when I was 18 or so, which is a long time ago by now, I won a tournament, and then I won a battalion box Empire, and I didn't really like Empire at all at the time. So then I started to turn it into a Vampire Covenant army, Vampire Count army. And then fluff-wise, I argued that it could be maybe an Empire host that was trapped in a cave, and then by an evil necromancer, and then the necromancer turned everything into vampires, basically. That's a very short story. I'm not that good at telling stories, apparently. No, but that would be the background. So an Empire army locked up in a cave for a long time, and then either on the verge of losing the Empire functionalities or turning into vampires. Um, and I thought that would be quite a cool fluff for the army. And I wanted to also give it a little bit of mysteriousness and a bit of a darker scheme. So I thought that maybe an Empire army could have been colored black, white, and red, and then over time the red faded to like pinkish because of all the pigment degraded over time. And that would make sense in my head, but then in the end, it turns out that pink is not the best color to use for an impressive looking army. So in the end, the army looks like well, what you can see on the picture, and I would say it's decent because it's just painted, but it's not impressive in any way. So I'm a bit disappointed with that now, like years and years later. Um, so I've always wanted to do something about the army, basically, just taking it to a bit of a next level where it stands out a bit more. It's also the army that, well, between my armies, I try to just also be as efficient as possible in painting, and then my Dread Elves and my Warriors of the Dark Gods, I put in a bit more effort to make it look really good, or at least as good as I can get armies to look. And then for this one, I just wanted to get it over and done with. But I think it's time now to revamp this army. So there's a couple of things that I wanna take on in this army. And that's mostly the color pink. I want to replace it for a bit more bright color, a bit more flashy, so that it's still a bit of a in your face kind of look. Because what you can see now is that all the colors are getting, well, all the pink is getting toned down basically. Um, and pink as a very strong color is not nice. So I'm actually leaning towards orange. So just leaving the black and the white and the other colors basically as they are, and then just exchanging the pink for orange. So just quite a bright orange with still some very bright orange highlights to make the army stand out a bit more. And then as I'm going to revamp the army anyway, I might as well just tackle the bases at the same time. Because the bases, basically, I cheated a little bit there. Just having blank bases with some cotton wool on it to resemble some kind of mist was the idea. Um, but I really wanna improve on that now. So I actually decided to order some stuff from Green Stuff World. This is not a sponsored video, by the way, because I have way too few subscribers for anyone to sponsor my content. But it's just, yeah, they have these rolling pins that I think I will really like. I've never used them before, but the idea sounds really good. So these rolling pins, basically, you have the milliput or the green stuff, whatever you use, just some kind of putty that you put on a base. You roll over with the rolling pins, and you get a texture imprinted on your bases. They have all kinds of different pins for different textures, for different kind of atmospheres. So I got the Temple and the Templar Abbey one, and I think together they will make for a decent variety also in textures on the bases. And to still supplement that, I got some resin treasure pieces because, well, we're in a cave, so in a cave, obviously, there's just piles of gold everywhere. That makes sense. There's also wooden boxes in the cave, and otherwise, I couldn't really find any cave-related stuff other than stalactites, stalagmites. Um, so, and I'm not too big of a fan of stalagmites. I don't know how to paint them mostly. I think it's just gonna look like a rock, and yeah, that is basically what a rock is. I also got a ton of acrylic gems because, well, caves are full of gems, right? And to ramp up the vampiric aspect of my army, I got 150 skulls, so I can replace a lot of heads with skulls. I think that will really give me some conversion points. Well, mostly it will look just more awesome than just old Empire miniatures, basically. Um, yeah, got some resin skulls, got some burning skulls. So the burning skulls, I'm gonna paint on some flame stuff with orange, and then it's gonna look awesome, I hope. So I'm still looking a little bit for what kind of color scheme I should use on the basis. I am thinking some kind of gray blue combination, so that you have a gray that's kind of, yeah, the stones itself, it's always difficult. Like, do you want to go for light stones? Do you want to go for dark stones? I think I want to go for dark stones because usually when you paint models, it's better to have your bases darker than the model itself because then the model stands out a bit more. But then again, I'm paying quite a lot of attention now to the bases, so maybe something will still change there. It could also still look good with some rather light bases. Anyway, for the blue on the base, if I go for grey blue, I don't really want a very strong blue. I think I just want to go for like a grey blue kind of blue. Wow, this explanation is amazing, isn't it? Yeah, but with that, I think I'm set up for a pretty good revamp of my army. It's gonna take a while. The stuff is first has to arrive, and then it's gonna still take a long while for me to finish this. So yeah, it's exciting. I'm at a point where I don't really want to start a new army. I definitely don't want to start painting an entire new army, especially not in ninth age because the armies get bigger and bigger. So this is actually quite a nice thing to do, I think. Yeah, so I'll keep you posted and let me know if you have any thoughts or suggestions on how to tackle this even more efficiently. Thank you for watching.